Season 4. This episode is entitled The Roots Have Nowhere to Grow. Have you ever felt stuck even though you were doing all the right things? Showing up consistently, working smart and efficiently, learning and growing, and reaping and sowing, yet somehow it feels like progress is at a standstill? It isn't because we lack potential. And it isn't because we lack talent. It's certainly not because we lack discipline. But sometimes because growth had created needs that our current environment was no longer designed to support. And here's what great gardeners understand: they understand the importance of where you plant. A plant can be healthy and still struggle to grow, not because there's something wrong with the roots, but because the roots have reached the limits of the container of the pot that it's planted in. And this made me wonder, how often do we blame ourselves when the real issue may be that we've reached the limits of our current environment? As we continue walking the garden, today we're talking about what happens when the roots have nowhere left to grow. Hey y'all, I'm Madison Samone Chase, also known as Miss Chase. I was raised in church, and my great grandmother played the piano, and I used to sing in the choir and definitely made a joyful noise. And my faith journey has always been at the center of who I am. And I am incredibly thankful to have been raised by a hardworking, sacrificial, high performing single mother who remains my biggest fan and forever bestie, best friend for real. Honoring God through service and making my mama proud and using the gifts He gave me has always been deeply important to me. Over the past several seasons of Cut to the Chase at 8, now C2TC8 Her Circle, which stands for High Performing Empowered Women Who Are Ready to Thrive, we have talked about awareness, detox, discernment, and my favorite, No More Nice series, the difference between being nice and kind, and boundaries, and rebuilding and becoming. But as I entered this next season, I found myself thinking less about what needed to be removed and more about what needed to be cultivated. Because before a gardener plants anything for the next season, the gardener walks the garden. The gardener takes inventory. They notice what flourished. They noticed what struggled. They notice what produced fruit. They also notice what never took root. They notice what needs pruning. And they notice what has completed its purpose. And that's what season 4 for me is all about: walking the garden and taking a real honest look at the people, places, and things in our lives. And taking a real honest look at the people and places and things. The PPT audit, not with judgment, not with shame, but with wisdom. Because every person, every place, and everything produces fruit. And before we ask for a bigger harvest, we may need to take a closer look at the root. So whether you're a mother, a single mother, a father, a single father, a caretaker, an entrepreneur, a high performing, aspiring entrepreneur, a high performing mother, single mother, working a 9-to-5 job, juggling 2 or 3 jobs, quietly rebuilding, or simply trying to grow through life one season at a time, this space and this circle is for you, my high performers. So if you're listening and or watching, pull up a real chair or a digital chair and grab yourself a cup of hot or cold herbal tea. And welcome to my cozy home of Cut to the Chase at 8, or C2TC8 Her Circle. A 15-minute micro learning moment for macro living transformations. And I am truly overjoyed that you are here. Now let's take a breath together to open this episode. We're going to inhale for 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One of the most fascinating things about gardening is observing the difference between a plant growing in a pot and a plant growing in the ground. A potted plant, it can thrive and it can be beautiful. It can be healthy, it can be productive, and it can produce fruit. But eventually, something happens to that plant that is planted in a pot. The roots begin expanding until they reach the boundaries of the pot or the container that it's planted in. And once they reach those boundaries, growth becomes more difficult, if not impossible. And not because the roots are bad, and not because the plant is failing, and not because the gardener has done something wrong or used the wrong fertilizer or not the right seed. The roots simply have nowhere else to grow and or go. And meanwhile, a tree planted in the ground often has room to continue expanding. Its roots can reach deeper and its roots can reach farther and wider. And over time, that additional space influences what becomes possible. So the lesson isn't that pots are bad. The lesson is that growth creates new environments and requirements. So what's once supported us in one season may not be sufficient for the next season. And sometimes we assume we need more motivation, more discipline, more effort, more hustle. But occasionally the issue isn't effort at all. Occasionally the issue is capacity. And that can show up in many ways. A business can outgrow old systems or IT or an app. A person can outgrow old thinking. A leader can outgrow old habits. A ministry can outgrow an old structure. A dream can outgrow the original plan. And growth often creates needs that didn't exist before. And wisdom helps us recognize when growth is asking for more room. Which brings me to the PPT audit: people, places, and things. People. Who in my life is helping me to grow beyond the environment that I'm currently in? And who encourages expansion rather than limitation? And then who challenges me in a positive way, in an edifying way, in a building way to become more than I currently am? Places. What environments support growth? What environments feel restrictive? And where do I feel challenged, stretched, and developed? Things. What systems, habits, beliefs, commitments, or expectations may no longer fit the season I'm entering? And where might growth be asking for additional capacity? Our SAC challenge. This week's SAC challenge is simple. Practice one act of spontaneous, authentically assertive communication. And maybe it sounds like I've grown since that season, or I need a different strategy, or I'm ready for more responsibility, or this approach no longer fits where I'm going. Or perhaps I need more room to grow, because growth often requires honesty before it requires change. The three keys: key number one, growth creates new requirements. What worked in one season of your life may not sustain this current season or the next season of your life. Key number two, capacity influences growth. And sometimes the limitations, it's not necessarily ability, it's possibly the environment. Key number three, outgrowing a container doesn't make the container bad. It may simply mean you've grown beyond the container that or the environment that you're currently in, which brings me to the one reflection question. Where in my life have my roots reached the limits of the current container? Today, we explored an important lesson about growth. Sometimes the issue isn't talent, it isn't effort, it isn't discipline, it isn't potential, it isn't your gift, it isn't your purpose. Sometimes growth has simply reached the limits of the current container. This week, pay attention to the areas of your life where you feel constrained, not with frustration and not with judgment, but with curiosity. And ask yourself, is the problem me? Or is the problem the environment? Or is growth asking for more room? Before we go, let's revisit today's three keys. Key number one, growth creates new requirements. Key number two, capacity influences growth. Key number three, outgrowing a container doesn't make the container bad. And our one reflection question, where in my life have my roots reached the limits of the current container? So take that question with you, sit with it, journal, pray about it, and see what comes up for you. See what rises to the surface. And remember, growth isn't always about doing more. Sometimes growth is about creating room for what is already developing, what is currently present, what is currently in process. So continue giving yourself grace in this space, and then grace in the space and the season that you're in. So let's take one closing breath together. We're going to inhale for 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If this episode pricked your heart or it lit a spark, please subscribe and share this with someone you care about. And leave a comment so that this episode becomes a dialogue and not just a monologue. And if you feel led, please leave a 5-star review so that this space can continue to grow and serve others. And remember that new episodes come out on the 15th of every month for 15 days, 2 episodes per day, one at 8 a.m. and one at 8 p.m. So 30 new episodes per month. And so until next time, I am Madison Samone Chase, and this has been another episode of Cut to the Chase at 8, now C2TC8 Her Circle, which stands for High Performing Empowered Women and some men who are ready to thrive. And it is a 15-minute micro learning moment for macro living and transformation. So blessings to you and yours. And remember, sometimes the roots aren't the problem. Sometimes the roots simply have nowhere left to grow. Thank you for listening again.